Welcome to Knowledge Cast. This is a look into the world of knowledge management, information management, data management, AI, and everything in between. This is brought to you by Enterprise Knowledge. I'm Zach Wahl, founder and CEO of EK, and today we're speaking with Melanie Adams of MSD, also known as Merck & Company Incorporated. And the role that you play there, Melanie, is Global Talent Development and Training Operations Lead, Digital Manufacturing Operations. Did I get that right?
You nailed it in one. Well done.
That's a mouthful. We need an acronym or something for that title.
We do, but the acronym is equally as awkward. I tried to say it in a meeting the other day and I fell over it. So I have to figure out something much more succinct than the acronym that currently exists.
All right, we'll workshop that. In the meantime, Melanie, if you've listened before, the way I always like to lead off with my guests is to ask them to explain knowledge management. What is your definition?
Right. So first of all, thank you for having me here, and hello to all the listeners. For me, knowledge management, as I understood it more and more deeply, became very much about people and ways of working and mindsets and behaviors. So I actually very much associate knowledge management with cultural aspects and how people are working, how they're thinking about the work that they do, how they think about the expertise within their teams, how they harness it, share it, and set others up for success. So while it is a catalogue of tools to enable that behavior, for me, first and foremost, it's about the people, their mindsets, and their behaviors.
Excellent. I always go for the verbs, and you have a ton of good ones there. Harnessing expertise, sharing expertise, how they think, how they work, how they connect. This is, I think, a nice human-centric definition, but also one that has a lot of action and an outcome attached to it. So that's great. Now, you are technically, according to that very long title, in a learning role, but you also work a lot within the KM space, and we see those things going together like peanut butter and jelly. So that makes a ton of sense. Talk to me about how a normal day looks to you, how you use KM for your learning efforts, how you leverage your learning expertise and knowledge management initiatives. Give me the play-by-play.
Sure. So a day can be, well, actually, it's full of variety for me, which I very much enjoy. It started with understanding that knowledge management is a part of how we do everything. So when you look at it like that, it's actually quite easy to integrate it into processes. So the first part of my title is talent development. So with that, it's development planning and succession planning. So I use knowledge management to develop colleagues by, if they are novices in certain tasks, maybe they'd shadow or buddy with or be mentored by an expert. And that way they're developing into that kind of way of working and learning those skills from that expert. When it comes to KM for succession planning, that's more about your skills assessment, but beyond your skills assessment, it's like, who are my experts? Who are my one and onlys? How much risk am I at losing that expertise because I have a one and only? And have I smartly built a strategy where that one and only is teaching the nexpert how to do their role? So when they get new opportunities and move on, it's more of a celebration than a dread. And then when it comes to learning operations, we very much look at data and trends. So you'll find there's a lot of avenues within organizations to identify what causes a lot of downtime, what tickets are being raised most frequently, what kind of support requests are happening. And when we identify those types of peak trends, we try and impact them positively by generating learnings, but learnings that include experience and tacit knowledge. So we're going to try and go way beyond a computer-based training session or a PowerPoint or an SOP. We're trying to give people real-life scenarios through their training sessions so that they can see something that absolutely already happened historically. They can learn what the solution was at that time, but then they can also ideate about what went well, what didn't go well, because not everything is perfect, unfortunately. And now with the new learnings and insights that we have, what could we do better the next time? And so there's just some examples of how we would integrate KM into development, talent planning, and learning.
Wow, there's a lot there, and I like it. So let's pull these things apart. Let's go to the first one first, succession plan. So first of all, I got to say broadly, I love the fact that everything you just said has to tie to business value, both succession planning and learning operations. Both of those elements, you got to the point that says, this is what it does for the organization. It removes risk. It upskills faster. It connects to expertise. And I feel like that is so much the missing piece of the puzzle in a lot of KM operations and conversations. So well done for bringing those in so clearly. And I know our listeners are really going to appreciate that. So we talk succession planning, and I love your phrase of the one and onlys. Fun fact, I was in the musical My One and Only in high school. So we can come back to that. I'll sing you a little later if we've got time. But so the one and only is such a risk and such a worry in so many organizations. How do you find the one and only?
Oh, I love that question. So it is actually, again, that's the behavioral mindset change piece. So I honestly believe leaders don't have the time to pause long enough to think about who are my one and onlys, who are my experts, because it's all about the schedule, meeting the deadlines, getting the job done, delivering to the customer. And when you're kind of, I want to say, firefighting like that to drive towards these KPIs, that probably doesn't come into the mix as much as it probably should. So my job is to, again, build it into the flow of work in such a natural, easy way that, like, for example, one of the tools I would use is the ROC, which is retention of critical knowledge, risk assessment. And what I would ask you to do with that risk assessment is identify the 5 or 6 or 20, depending on the manager, colleagues on your team, and you'd write their skills, what you know them for, down beside their name. And then you would see that kind of when you work along the rows of the questions that are asking you, how many people have this level of expertise in this area? And I have those questions built into the risk assessment, where that is where you get your red flag at the end, your amber flag, or your green flag, based on this risk assessment template that I've created. That is quite simple. Unfortunately, sometimes that is still too much of an ask. Depending on, again, the manager, when you come to somebody and you say, I have more tasks and templates for you to fill out, it's just the wrong thing to do. Any one of us, including me, who's incredibly passionate about knowledge management, I would go, no, thank you. I have enough. If it's not a need or something that helps me deliver to the customer, I'm not going to do it. I don't have the time. It'll be deprioritized. So we have to try and make it simple. So there are other ways of doing it. It's like, who am I always scheduling to do certain tasks? If I can vary the schedule, then that's another way to identify it. But my favorite question that I like to ask when I do have a manager's attention is there anybody on your team that if they handed in their notice right now, you would get a pang of anxiety? And if the answer is yes, then that is your one and only. But that's a quick fire way. It's not a scientific or a data driven way. It's more of an emotional vibe. But I think you kind of do know when you're asked those types of questions. So it is kind of vibey, a little bit, what you know, what your instincts tell you. And if you have the time, use the templates.
I think that's great. When we go back to the ROC methodology and the template, if I understand it properly, the challenge with that is that it's predicated on actually having a clear mapping of the skills it takes to do one's job, or all the skills it takes within the organization. So that is often the call that we get. An organization is looking to map all those skills. That's hard. So how did you go about getting that complete grasp on the skills necessary at Merck?
So I haven't done it for the entirety of the organization. I have done it piecemeal. I always bite-size what I do and deliver value and then generate hype and excitement. Because when one manager says, gosh, I worked with Melanie, this is what I got out of the knowledge management strategy or the training operations or the talent management that she gave me, then other leaders kind of say, I want a piece of that. Sometimes not. So when I say I piecemeal it is I try and find a small group to pilot and make it easy for them to execute this. And I would normally ask the manager closest to the technical colleagues. So I am in the pharmaceutical industry, technical expertise, be it scientists or engineers or digital colleagues that work in IT. I try and get the manager just above the unit of the technical expertise because they automatically, again, know the skills. So, if you go too many tiers away, then that's when you start drawing blanks. I don't actually know the role. I don't know the job. I don't know the task. So you have to get right in there and get to the core of the business and work with the managers and the boots on the ground at the core of the business, which is what I'm best known for. I kind of, unfortunately, dealing with senior leaders would be an after the fact for me. I gown up, I put on the hairnet, and I get stuck in to the actual areas where the expertise is most critical, because it's when you are a very technical organization, your engineers, your scientists, and your IT colleagues are your bread and butter. So that's where I focus.
Yeah. I love that. And you're not using a metaphor. I mean, I can picture you in one of those clean white suits and the hairnet and everything else. I miss my days of steel-toed boots and hard hats.
I know. Yeah. And they're very comfortable. I actually wore them out of work one time by mistake, meeting my friends in a bar. And they were like, "What? That was a choice." And I was like, "Actually, it wasn't. I forgot I was wearing my steel-toe cuffs."
Yeah, no, just throw a belt around that thing. Just cinch it. That's the latest style. Okay, we're still on succession planning. You have successfully identified the one and onlys, the people that are the holders of unique expertise within the organization. And my guess is you probably then compare that to demographics, which ones are closest to retirement, which ones are seeing the most attrition over to competitors, whatever else. So you found the people. But then how do you convince them to share their knowledge? This is often a major sticking point. These are the busiest people in the company because they're the one and only. So do they have the time? Do they have the inclination?
Generally, no, which is yet another challenge. So how I try to frame it is that, again, I never go in tools first. Generally, if I'm working in an area, they have gone through some sort of awareness session about what knowledge management actually is. So when they are identified and focused on, it's not a out of left field situation where they don't get where it's coming from. If you have been identified as an expert by your leader, I try and encourage the leader to use it as a recognition, because sometimes, and I speak from myself, I'm actually a scientist by trade. And I've worked as a technical expert for the first 12 years of my 21 career in pharmaceuticals. So I didn't know knowledge management was what I needed. I didn't know why it was so hard to get the job done. And I also didn't know why I used to get blocked sometimes when I went for new roles. And it was because I used to be the one and only. So these insights it's why I'm so passionate about integrating KM into development planning, because sometimes you meet the one and only and they're very frustrated because anytime they go for that gig, that opportunity, they are blocked because of the business impact of them leaving. And that's not fair on the human. So how I frame it is exactly that. It's we've recognized you, your contributions to this team. We want to enable you to become a leader within your team by you sharing what you know with others, thus opening yourself up to be available for other positions, because we want to keep that talent within the organization too. And more often than not, when people feel recognized, seen, and develop so that they're always challenging themselves, they are more likely to stay. So it's a benefit to the organization, but it's a benefit to them. So I try to do it in a way where they understand it's the what's in it for me. I am going to get more opportunities if I transfer my critical knowledge to the rest of the team. That way, the team is set up for success, but so am I. And that's kind of how we frame it.
I love the whiffums there, and I love the positive spin on it. And the new one that I really like that you just shared is the idea that sometimes those one and onlys are kept from going lateral within the organization or trying something new because they're so critical where they are. So that's a really good spin on it. Now, the negative spin, the one that I often find myself battling, is the knowledge is power. I don't want to share my knowledge because if I do, then I'm less important to the organization.
Yes.
So how do you blunt that sword?
Well, there's some cases where there's nothing you can do about it, just to call a spade a spade. But the other case that I have often said, I sometimes can be a bit logical and blunt in my delivery. And when somebody's pushing back with that, I kind of go, well, when you share your knowledge, you're not giving it away. You still have it. So when you go into your interviews, you can still give these examples of your great approaches and the scenarios in which you solved problems and you got the team through bad times and you got the customer what they needed. You don't lose that. That is retained within you. Just sharing it doesn't change your value. And sometimes that works, but I have obviously met people that aren't. The other thing that's actually a nuance that you may not have considered is when you approach somebody and tell them that they are the experts, they don't believe you. I've come across that so many times where they're like, no, I just come in and do the job and go home. And you're like, yeah, but you do it so well. You have right first time execution every time, and you don't have variability, which again in the pharma industry are critical in a way of working. It's magic if you get somebody like that on your team. And when I ask that question, if I'm training a team in awareness about knowledge management, and I say, that question, is there somebody on your team that would give you anxiety if they handed in their notice now? And the person who doesn't raise their hand or laugh or smirk, I kind of home in on them and I'm like, well, that's because you're the one that would give the team anxiety if you handed in your notice. But sometimes people just don't see it. It's amazing. And highlighting that to them can actually be a lovely thing because they kind of get a bit blown away.
Yeah.
When you uncover that about them.
It is empowering. And I don't know if it stems from humility or imposter syndrome or whatever else, but you do see these people. My experience is that the ones that don't recognize themselves as an expert also struggle to convey their expertise because what they're doing is so innate. They never really were taught it. They have just figured it out. And so their ability to convey that knowledge is limited and needs to be coaxed. So now let's get into that piece of it. You mentioned shadowing and mentoring. My favorite is, we were just talking about this, the toddler method, the 5 whys, but why, my kids are really good at that one. And I love the getting to those root causes and continuing to challenge people, but it doesn't always work. What are your favorite techniques to actually coax actionable, specific knowledge out of people?
Oh, gosh. So I have a few tricks up my sleeve. You may have heard them before, you may not. I stick a GoPro to somebody who's certain technical expertise. If they don't articulate it well, or they're just like, I just do it that way, I don't know what to tell you. There's nothing special. It's like, there's something special. So would you be willing to wear a camera and have us record your approach? A lot of times people say yes. A lot of times a camera can't go into certain areas. So that's not always going to work either. So in that case, then I try to make them, a lot of these people are actually train the trainers in the technical environment. So I ask them, if you were training me and we were at the observation phase and you were talking me through the steps, what is it you would say during that conversation? And it's the conversation that draws out the tacit knowledge. So you're exactly right. It's the 5 whys. But if you don't have the why and you're trying to get somebody to fill out a template or update a rock or a job aid, you kind of have to bring them into their environment and get the wheels turning and have scenarios. Another thing I actually do, which has turned out quite efficient, is we in our organization, we would have multiple manufacturing facilities. A lot of them would do similar work. So I actually get the one and onlys that do similar work in different groups, and I get them together on one call, and I throw a scenario out there, or I just bring up the SOP, and I'm like, talk me through this SOP. And you'll find they start firing, well, I do it that way. And then, well, actually, no, I do it that way. And it's beautiful conversation of, well, why do you do it that way? And then somebody might say, well, we had an investigation a year ago, and that's our corrective action to avoid that from ever happening again. And the other team were like, we haven't had an investigation like that yet. Oh my God, we better bring that best practice back. And so I've created a bit of a collaborative environment where that conversation, that knowledge share, it's more fluid. Because God love the people you just hand a template to and you're like, capture your tacit knowledge. They don't know where to start. So I do have a list of questions as well that it is extremely challenging. The list of questions are very helpful though. Or bring out a scenario. If there is a previous investigation or a change control or something like that, and put it in front of them and get them to talk you through it, they'll tell you the nuances. You'll draw out the historical whys naturally that way. So it's an unusual, it's like a interrogation techniques, but positive ones, knowing the right question to ask at the right time to get them to go, oh, well, actually, no, we had to tap that 3 times because back pressure can occur if you don't. And you're like, how did you know that? And they're like, well, an investigation. And you're like, okay.
Yeah, I love the idea of getting a bunch of adjacent experts talking amongst themselves. That is not just about knowledge transfer and knowledge capture. All of a sudden, you're talking about innovation, right? Because one of them has potentially cracked an egg that the others haven't, and all of a sudden they can all learn from each other, and you're documenting potentially a new way of doing things that's better. That's
I will
great.
Actually build on that a little bit as well. There's a bit of a nuance. My technical experience helps. So if you are a team trying to start knowledge management and tacit knowledge capture in your area, try and get somebody on your team that has experience in the work. Because when I am facilitating those group expert sessions, for example, I've probably worked on the equipment too. So I can slide in a little question that I know is a pitfall. For example, when you're wiping down a piece of equipment and you have to use lint-free wipes, I would say, well, why? And they'd be like, oh, well, it creates static if you don't. And I'm like, okay, tell me more about that. But a lot of people probably let that breeze over if you weren't a scientist or an engineer working with that equipment. That tiny detail and creating static can make everything just go haywire. So if you've never created static, you might not realize that. So it's helpful if the person facilitating the conversation has a little bit of insight into the work.
So you have just given me the lead into my next question. And the problem with tacit knowledge capture is that everything you just described, you are charming, you're a trained facilitator, you have expertise in KM, you have expertise in learning, and you're a scientist. How do you scale tacit knowledge capture if it takes a Melanie Adams to be effective at it?
Well, this is where I'm excited about where the future is going. I do think we have tools that can enable that. If you build a AI bot with an Irish accent and call it Melanie, and send it off with Melanie's ability to identify opportunities to ask those nuanced questions. Unfortunately, I'm not a coder or I don't have those digital expertise, but I'd love to grill somebody that did and say, can you do it? Is this possible? I think that would be really exciting. But I think it has to be conversational. I don't know if that's possible either, but writing it down just isn't as good. It just doesn't capture the detail that a conversation can. So I don't know if it's possible to use a tool that can be built with interview technique with scientific background that you could build for your organization. I think that would be something that would be so cool.
Yes, but I think that there's baby steps to that, right? Because the part that we're missing today is, yes, there can be a conversational chat, but getting to look at you getting to see you smile as you ask a question, the humor, the inflection is so much of what it takes. And so I think that's where there's still a delta.
Yes, very much so.
KnowledgeCast is brought to you by Enterprise Knowledge, the world's largest dedicated knowledge management consultancy. From training to benchmarks, strategy, design, prototyping, and all the way to enterprise-level implementations, Enterprise Knowledge wants to be your services partner. Spanning the fields of knowledge management, knowledge graphs, data, learning, advanced content management, and enterprise artificial intelligence, contact us at info@enterprise-knowledge.com to discuss how we can support you.
I am excited by the technology, and I actually think that it's readily available at this point. What we've been doing in some organizations is leveraging their existing chat on online communications technologies like Zoom and Google Meet and everything else, record, which now transcribes, and then their AI tools can index that, and it basically is building the knowledge base just by having new joiners have conversations with experts. So for our listeners, there's a lot. You don't need to go and spend a couple $1 million on AI. Built into a lot of organizations today with a little bit of process and a fair bit of depth of expertise like yours, Melanie, there's stuff that organizations can be doing here to help scale.
Yes.
Have you played with any of that to any extent at this point?
No, it's still very human orientated in my organization. And you're right, it's probably because the nuances have never been thought about long enough to start designing those tools in-house yet. I do also understand, so one way that we scale it right now without those capabilities is we actually kind of give development opportunities or gig opportunities to people. So if I was looking to capture tacit knowledge of somebody in the IT space, for example, where I'm very weak and wouldn't be as good at capturing that tacit knowledge, I would actually ask an IT expert to facilitate the conversation for me. I would train them on what the conversation should hold and how to ask those kind of probing questions. And then I'd let them off to do it because they know what they're doing more than me. So that's how I'm doing it with the
IT
human
expertise and strong facilitative techniques always go together. Again, you're throwing unicorns at me left and right.
Yeah, no, there's a little bit of work in advance, which is why it's a development opportunity.
All right, fair. So you talked about the shadowing, the mentoring. That's in a way human to human knowledge transfer. How about explicit knowledge? Are you also going through the process of documenting this, of creating a knowledge base, of codifying it in a way that future receivers of knowledge can get it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, the AI and all of those beautiful tools are easier to build around your explicit knowledge. So being a big organization, we would be doing that right now. Obviously, having knowledge management expertise, my concern would be, have you cleaned up your content first so that AI is raking the good stuff and not having a mix of everything in there. But obviously, again, though, we know to be cautious about that because being a validated, regulated environment, we don't have space for hallucinations and mistakes like that. So, but with that, one experiment I did, again, I'm always tapping into any human I can get. And I had this absolutely fabulous graduate work with a team for 6 months. And I did my rock process with this team. But we ended up with 34 templates of rocks about different roles within this manufacturing area. So we challenged this graduate and we said, how can you help us tap into this knowledge? Because to be honest, if I'm fighting a fire, I'm not going to read 34 documents to try and find my solution. So he built a lovely AI kind of room where it's only those rocks within the room. And so you can ask the AI chatbot troubleshooting questions about a piece of equipment, or has this ever been mentioned? And it rakes the rocks. But it will say Melanie Adams' rock has given me this information. Zach Wahl's rock has given me that information. And then you can go and confirm it. But I thought that was very cool. I was so excited when he produced this. And this was his graduate 6-month program project. But I was like, you've actually changed the lives of the people in this operational area with that. You don't even know. It's very cool. And I think to this day, it's still being used. They have it there on their iPads in the manufacturing area and in real time. And because there was a turnover of staff in that area, which is why the project happened. Now the new staff that are trying to build their speed to competency, because being trained is something very different to being competent. That's where tacit knowledge comes in for me. And they have access to it now. They're not calling Zach, at 4 a.m. who's trying to sleep after putting the kids to bed saying, hey, look, I'm having this issue and we have to get the product made for the patient. Can you help me? Because anyone in the pharma industry, you can call us anytime and we will answer, because at the end of the day, there's a patient waiting for our product.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not how it should be. We should have access to information at the point of use so that we can independently make informed decisions, not depend on another person.
I was waiting for the phrase and you just gave it to me. So one of my favorite phrases from the learning field is learning at the point of need. And I've co-opted that to say knowledge at the point of need. And to me, this is where I get really excited. So if we do a great job cleaning up our content and ingesting it, if we do a great job with all of this knowledge transfer and succession planning and turning that into explicit knowledge, the next step is for us to know enough about what somebody's going to do with their day and push them the right knowledge for them to do it the right way, the most effective way, the safest way, the most expeditious way. This is really cool stuff. So in your role, have you begun to play with that? And the question that I really want to ask here is, how, as a KM and learning expert, have you made sure that you're part of those technical conversations? Because some of our listeners struggle with that.
That is true. So if knowledge management in your organization is still seen as a separate entity, you're never going to win. So I have done a huge amount of work in the last year to showing that knowledge management should be integrated into human organizational performance. So setting people up for success, right first time execution, and operational excellence, continuous improvement strategies. How do we improve our processes? Because knowledge management used to be in a bubble out here, separate to human performance and operational excellence, it never kind of got its foot in the door. It was always a separate extra entity, and it then got deprioritized. So I've worked very hard with my relationships with the leaders of those two strategic business organizations. And I've said, you would do best with these KM capabilities. Let me integrate them into how you deploy your business strategy. And you would do best with these. Let me integrate them into how you deploy your business strategy. So for example, right now, the pre-job brief, one of the simplest tools we have. Basically, before you start, what's your situational awareness? Have you got your checklist? We've built that checklist into the morning tier meeting, we call it, so the check-in meeting before the shift starts. And the whole team has to basically go through the pre-job brief together. Is there anything new, unique, different, difficult about the schedule today? So that someone has the space to go, well, actually, yes, I think that this is slightly different because. And then the next checklist is, have we closed all the doors? Have we wiped down all the areas? Have we brought in all the bins and boxes that we need? And what they have found is right first time execution has increased, because instead of launching into the task and realizing halfway through, I didn't bring in the trolley that I need. Let me stop everything and go get the trolley. While that seems minimal and small, that time adds up. And when you're scheduled for an 8-hour prep, but you have to stop for 40 minutes to go find a trolley, that then you have downtime. And people don't consider, I go after those tiny threads. I never try to move mountains. I go after those tiny little, what I call knowledge gaps that people fall into. And then I close them, and people are just brought so much joy. Like I actually say, if you manage your knowledge, you're bringing good vibes. People are actually happier because they execute their tasks flawlessly and they go home. And so that's how I do it. I've integrated it into other business strategies. It's not a separate entity. And that's how I managed to get right down into the operational areas, because I'm using those business strategies that are for the operational areas to bring KM right there.
KM makes happy employees, and happy employees are good at KM, right?
Exactly.
Excellent. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the learning side of the house. And what struck me about your earlier statements here was how data driven they are, which I think is phenomenal. X number of tickets on something that creates a flag for you to say this is an area where there's a knowledge gap, a learning gap. Do I have that right? Talk to me about that.
That's right. So I guess we would have a ticketing system obviously it's a digital platform within the organization. And sometimes I think skills can be very siloed. So if I am in manufacturing operations and I'm an operator, I might not actually be skilled in automation for the organization that I'm working in. The other team is. So if I'm having an automation issue, I'll raise a ticket, even though it's probably a quick fix. If I was educated or experienced or trained enough, I could probably do it myself. But I don't, because the way of working in any pharmaceutical industry I've been in is stop when onshore. Because again, it's product for patients. You don't play.
Right.
So if you're not sure, you stop. And then so people lean into raising tickets so that the expert can fix it. And I used to do it too. I'm not saying that anyone's wrong to do that. It's the safer option. But what that means is then digital operations are trying to solve problems that are something that somebody else could have fixed really if they had the information they needed at the point of use. So with that, I'm looking at the ticket trends. And then I ask the experts, because there's some ticket trends that might be massive, way beyond a KM solution, because it could be just coded wrong and it needs to be looked at that way. But if it's a simple, this was a troubleshooting fix, and these, 600 tickets could be resolved in 5 minutes if the person in operations had the information to tick these boxes. So that's kind of what we're going after first. It's what caused downtime. And when we weigh it, we're like, did that need to cause downtime? Could it have been a simple fix if the person just knew what to do or had the information they needed? And if the answer is yes, then that's where the KM piece comes in. Then we are trying to, basically what we're calling it is digital fluency. We're trying to get everybody in the organization given enough to be dangerous, that they can overcome these challenges that would have ordinarily caused downtime and get on with the job. But still, we have to try and keep that stop when onshore piece. So if we're not doing a good enough job at building that capability where people are confident to do the troubleshooting, we still have to make sure that they know, then raise the ticket. Don't take a chance.
Yeah. So this goes back, Melanie, to what you were previously saying, that you're not looking to transform the organization overnight. You're chipping away at inefficiencies, those little stoppages, and they add up to massive savings and outcomes for the organization. In a way, I'm picturing like kind of a matrix of what's easiest to fix and what is costly in time to the organization. And you could plot all of these tickets and say, okay, these are the ones that I'm going to go after. So once you figure out what you're going after, does it go back to that kind of succession planning, knowledge transfer, knowledge capture approach, or are you more actively leaning on the learning side of the house and creating a new class or creating a new piece of learning materials or something like that?
So because my role is not actually in L&D, you are correct. If it's a bigger thing, we would bring in the L&D organization to create training, official training about whatever task it is we've identified. But if it's nuances, like exposure to knowledge is enough, then I don't think we need to do that. So we would have automation accelerator training is something that my team has organized. 2 of my team members are actually automation experts. Again, I've done the hook of bring the person with the technical expertise to the table, and they can close the knowledge gaps and ask the right questions so much faster. So what they're actually doing to build the training is that scenario piece. So if we found a trend for situation that is an easy enough fix that we could bring that digital fluency to the operating team, we're going to do it through scenario-based training so that they have a real-life environment. We're going to make the real alarm go off, and we're going to give them the experience of resolving that alarm, but in a training environment.
Yeah.
So that's the type of stuff that we're going to do.
Do you have labs to do that, or are you doing this like on the shop floor in the off hours or something?
We would probably do it, they would go into a meeting room because a lot of it's laptop work.
Right.
And they would have a training environment on the laptop, and that's how it would happen. But when it comes to like the physical tasks, like equipment maintenance, which is my wheelhouse, that's where I come back in as the person trying to capture the expertise, because I'll ask the right questions. No, you get down and gown up and put your hairnet and your steel toe caps on, and that's where you do it that time. So it all depends on the skills, how you actually do it.
So we already touched on this a little bit, but how has AI changed your job?
My job? Well, it's changed a lot for me personally in the way that I work, because I have a slight nuance that I am dyslexic. Mm-hmm. So what I find is articulating knowledge management in a meaningful way to leaders can be very hard. It's not something I'm naturally good at. Because like that, it's hard to articulate unless the people who I can reach immediately are the people who are up at 4 a.m. trying to resolve the alarm.
Right.
Because I say that to them, I'm like, do you want to not be there? And they're like, yes. And I'm like, I got the solution for you. And they're like, I'm in. Yeah. No questions asked. But when you're with a leader who's been away from those scenarios, if they've ever worked in them, that's a much harder sell. So I actually use AI to help me articulate my pitch to the audience.
In a way, I'm kind of shocked, because you're such a good storyteller. I wouldn't think that you would need the assist, but it's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
How do you anticipate that AI is going to continue to evolve at Merck? As in, how's it going to impact the way that you are capturing knowledge and learning? What's the big thing on the roadmap that you can share?
For me, what I actually would love to work on in 2026 are the prompts.
Yeah.
I think when you're asking AI the right questions, then it can it has a better chance at finding you the right information. So I actually have an expert in my midst that is very, very good at helping people use their kind of ways of thinking to build the right prompt for them. So he's going to break the prompt down into the elements that it needs to be a good prompt for AI to successfully, because I think a lot of the problem with the use of AI is people just say, find me this. And AI then brings you back an onslaught of information from many, many areas, and you don't know how to digest that or what to do with it. So that's it. I know it's small and it's not earth-shattering, but I think if we bite-size get people with positive experiences with AI, because we've trained them how to ask it the right questions, then we can grow from there. Because I think a lot of people have forgotten about the change management piece. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think just saying we should digitize is enough. They are wrong. Like, don't forget about the levels of generation in an organization. You can't just assume that everybody is interested in digital, is good with digital. Some people are staying away from it just because they don't understand it and they're a little bit afraid of it. So start small. For me, the culture change will start with if they are successful at using the tool, and how you make them successful is making it simple, making it clear, and I think powerful prompts and knowing the elements of a good prompt is a great place to start. So that's my mission for 2026.
I love it. I totally agree. What's interesting is that I actually think the change management is lesser with some of the new technologies than they have been with some of the olders, because this is in a way almost more human. It's conversational. You're asking questions, you're refining. No, that's not what I meant. I'm seeing less generational pushback than I have from an enterprise search tool or a portal tool from generations past. So it's going to be interesting to see if that continues. If the next phase is the the AI avatar of you, the Melanie AI talking with people, is that going to be even easier to embrace because it's so familiar?
Yeah, that's interesting that you've seen that, because obviously me being in my silo of my organization, I wasn't aware of that. What I do know is that people are frustrated.
Yeah.
If they have to keep going back, going, no, that's not what I want. Then they're just like, oh, never mind. I'm just going to go back to the old ways of working because I don't have time to train AI. And that's in my environment, though, it's high octane. It is delivery. So if you're on your iPad, which we bring into the manufacturing areas to have your tools at the point of use, and you're arguing with AI because it's not giving you back what you need, you're just going to go, no.
I would say that is squarely an AI issue, not a change issue at that point. If your AI is too dumb to give you what you want. So, Melanie, you've accomplished so much. I want to close with this. What's the advice that you'd give to somebody who wants to be you when they grow up? I mean, you're doing these great things. You're at the center of so many important initiatives at your organization. You're speaking the language. You're leading the good initiatives. How would somebody approach a career like yours?
I'm very passionate about setting people up for success. And I know that sounds like a line, but it's not. I have had people, after I've worked with them long enough, come up and hug me because they've either been given a new career opportunity they never thought they'd get, or they've been given peace while they're at home. And that, for me, meant everything. I was like, this is the type of work I just want to do. I want to make people happy. But my recommendation to be really good at it is to understand the business and the work, not just the strategy and the taglines and the mission, vision and value. That, to be honest, that's no good to you. But you need to understand the real life environment. You have to be, if you are never worked in pharma but you're consulting with pharma, ask for a day in the life, visit a manufacturing area, gown up, know what that feels like, go into the area, know what it sounds like, actually use all of your senses. And because of that, then you will build an AI strategy that will be adapted and that will work because you know what you're talking about, because you understand the environment you're bringing your KM strategy to.
I talk so much about authenticity, DK, and boy, if that wasn't a beautiful, authentic statement, and you prove it. So well done.
Thank you.
Melanie, love the conversation. Thank you so much for being on.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining this episode of KnowledgeCast. To check out more, visit our website at enterprise-knowledge.com. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.